9700. All right, everybody. So yeah, let's flip this thing. We're going to talk about the history-making election in Georgia. I got Reverend Anthony Williams here and Eric Prince and T.Y. You be a part of the conversation too. So T.Y., check it out. So Georgia history. Stacey Abrams, she brought it on home. Got 2 Senate seats. That's a big deal.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a big deal. Yeah. So, what do you think that black folks, now that we have the presidency, or Democrats have the presidency, because I'm not Democrat or Republican, right? I leverage them both. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, wherever the money is, because you know my feeling, right? I believe that both of them are white supremacists. They too old not to be. So the whole idea is, I leverage whoever got the power. Who got the power?
The most.
That's right. Who got the power now?
The Democrats got the
Who
power.
am I trying to leverage down there?
The Democrats.
Right. When Trump was had the power, he had the power, right?
That's right.
Who was I leveraging?
Trump.
That's right. I made a whole lot of money because of the policies of Trump. You know why? Because I knew what the policies were.
Right.
Now I'm going to find out all the policies of Biden. I'm going to make money under Biden.
That's right.
I've made money as a businessman since Jimmy Carter. Through Bush, through Reagan, whatever. I don't care about none of them something tuckers like the old folks. I'm serious business. All I care about, because I ain't got to go to bed with them. I ain't got to make love to them. They ain't got to be my preacher. They are politicians. And I leverage politicians.
That's right.
I don't fall in love with politicians. I ain't loyal to politicians because they ain't loyal to me. You get what I'm saying? We just leveraging each other. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
That's right. Like when you work a job, you don't fall in love with your boss, do you?
No.
Nah. You leverage your boss.
Right.
You do what you do it for exchange of what they gonna give you, right?
Right.
If they don't do their part, you out of there, ain't you?
Absolutely.
You ain't staying, are you?
No.
Come on, y'all better talk to me.
Getting out of there.
You better talk to me. I'm telling you, if this is the real deal, Holyfield. This is the real deal for real. So, what do you think we ought to ask for from Joe Biden and the Democrats who have the Senate and the House?
We need to ask for whatever we can get. Reparations. We need to ask for to clear student debt. The sky's the limit. Whatever you want to ask for, you might as well ask for it.
Because I keep saying we, because I'm talking about black people, right?
Right,
Because
right.
black folks are the reason they got there.
They got there, right?
That's right. So they ought to give us something.
Exactly.
If Hispanics were the reason they got there, Hispanics would be getting a whole lot, right?
Because they go ask for it.
And white folks would do, they go, right?
They gonna be there.
That's right. Like they would have took over the Capitol because they believe that was it. They crazy rollers, man. I'm telling you. All right. So I got Reverend Anthony Williams and Eric Prince in the studio. All right, brothers. Welcome to the AC Green Show.
Hey, how you doing, AC?
Doing real good. So, what do you think, Eric? What do you think we should ask for?
Well, you're right about asking for reparation, but I heard you guys talking about the commandments earlier, and one of the reasons we're in this mess is because we haven't been keeping the commandments. Whether it be them or us, we haven't been keeping it, and that's the problem now, is that we think that these laws, these divine laws, have been nailed to the cross with Jesus. But those weren't the laws that was nailed to the cross. The only law that was nailed to the cross was the law of animal sacrifice, because that's all they was doing back then, sacrificing animals. When Jesus gave up the ghost, that was the end of animal sacrifice. That was not the end of the commandments. If you go to Revelations 22:14, it says, blessed is he who does the commandments.
Okay, so we haven't been doing it.
We haven't been doing it.
So somehow maybe some people kind of, I'm not saying legitimately they do this, but maybe some people kind of conflate, their religion with whatever the government may be saying, or whatever the Democrats may be saying, whatever the Republicans. Because when them white folks was going at the Capitol, it was almost like a religious thing for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But you got to understand, the greatest wars ever fought in the world have been over religion.
Exactly.
Ever heard of the Crusades? By the way, you know what I'm saying. So the thing about it is, we need to really focus on politics for what it really is.
Right.
It is not religion.
Right.
So now that we understand that it doesn't have to be emotional, but because when you go to your job and get a paycheck, it ain't emotional. It's like, you better give it to me, or I'm out of here. And you better be, hope I ain't trying to come find you. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is, what should we ask for? Right now, you deal with that with your area of health. What should we ask for?
Well, we should ask for more money to go towards preventative care. Because see, we're dealing in a healthcare system that deals with crisis
Should
management.
black folks get 100% free health care for maybe the next 100 years?
Well, they should.
But I'm saying business.
Which education? Because see, the thing about it is that, I don't know if you know, I was a paramedic through the 90s, so I know emergency medicine, and I've had a lot of people down me under my hands while I'm trying to save them, because they were so far into disease progression, it didn't matter what type of life-saving measures I had. So if they're not dealing with prevention, they can call 911 for the rest of the week and they still are not going to get what they need, which is education and more money towards prevention.
All right, so Reverend Anthony Williams, welcome to the show. What do you think black folks should ask for now that we are responsible for the Democrats having the presidency, having the Senate, and having the House of Representatives?
Real legislative and policy change.
Talk about it specifically.
In the state of Illinois, we are pushing to turn H.R. 0433 into legislation. Violence as a health crisis, violence as a disease. Right now, because of what happened in Washington, D.C. is an indication of the fact that America is sick. Violence is really a health care crisis.
Like last night,
CDC
somebody went around the city in Evanston and went to shooting up each other.
It's very crucial. America is a nation of laws. You move the needle by way of the law. And so right now, we are in a position to pass H.R. 0433 into law.
Okay.
Very key. So now when you pass it at the state level, you pass it at the federal level. The second thing is, like the young man said, reparation. So it's policy change, legislation, and reparations.
How much money do you think black folks should get in reparations?
The process, there is an old sitting resolution on by John Conyers. I think it's HR 60, something like that at the federal level. It's just sitting there. See, we have people in place. When you take the billionaire Robert Smith, who helped the young brothers at Morehouse. When you have a reparations commission, and you have organizations like ADOS, organizations like NCOBRA out here, they've done the work. But now having a reparations commission, and therefore when your reparations is released to you, there's no middle person. It comes from the government by way of portfolio. By way of portfolio. You know, it's not just a check. There may be stocks, bonds, etc. There's a number of things by way of portfolio. That is due to us now because our vote saved America. Once again, black folks saved America.
That's right. So here's the thing. So T.Y., look at this. So let's say, what about college tuition? I can tell you, one of the greatest issues in this country across the board, but then specifically with African Americans, black folks, is the fact that we have extraordinary college debt.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. I mean, this is like throughout the whole community. Why can't black folks have all of their college debt erased, and why can't black folks have free college for the next 100 years?
100 years.
I'm going for the 100 years, man. Forget 10 years, 5 years, and forget a certain amount of money. Because I believe reparations to black folks should literally be for the rest of the time this country exists, because we're partners with this country.
Right.
Think about it. If our ancestors built this country, we are partnered with you now.
Right.
So you ought to give us something for the rest of the time this country exists. You all call us 773-928-9230. What do you have to add to this? What do you think black folks need to be asking for now that we are the reason why there will be a Democratic president? The House is Democratic, and the Senate, thanks to the work of a lot of good people down in Georgia and Stacey Abrams. What do you think that we ought to be asking for? 773, what is it, 928?
9230.
There you go. That's what I'm trying to say. I want to make sure I'm right. 773-928-9230. Right quick, Reverend Anthony Williams, you talk about violence because your son passed away. Talk about that.
My son Nehemiah Williams got killed February 21st, ironically the same day as Malcolm X.
Wow.
But he got killed February 21st, 2018. And I had been working on the issue of violence, studying.
So how did he die?
Well, he was ambushed coming out of a store in Burnham. It's a great tragedy because this is a common thing in our community. And so our abnormal behavior now becomes a normal behavior. But I had been studying violence, and I've been saying for years prior to my son getting killed that we needed hearings on violence as a health crisis, because the CDC says that violence is a health crisis. Violence is your second pandemic, but violence was your pandemic before coronavirus. The CDC says that violence is a health crisis. When the CDC tells you that something is a health crisis, you better listen.
So the CDC has said that violence is a health crisis.
A health crisis.
So let me ask you a question. if the CDC, because everybody's now into the science and the data, if the CDC said that violence is a health crisis, then why aren't we listening to that like we're listening to the information CDC puts out about the coronavirus?
Well, first of all, the politicians didn't want you to know about the coronavirus. Trump was a perfect example. To ignore the science. Well, you cannot ignore the science on the issue of violence either. It's a disease, but it's not a contagion. And there's a process, there's a skeleton in place ready to become law. And that's HR 0433, violence as a health crisis. Right now, I talked to Representative Ford. They plan this week on putting on the table. We have an opportunity for Illinois not only to be the land of Lincoln, but the land of civility. We need people, we need civility right now, more than ever before.
And you know what? That may sound like a mute point to some people, but when you have people who have mental health issues, like obviously the Nightingale brother who went out there and started indiscriminately shooting last night from the south side of Chicago all the way up to Evanston, killing people, shooting them in the head, then you have an issue. And if we ignore this too much longer, we're gonna have some real situations out here. You think about not wanting to come outside because of a virus. Imagine not wanting to come outside because you have hundreds of thousands of people that have lost their minds.
And nobody's safe. That's why when you have a problem in America, you take a legislative measure. We would still be on the back of the buses with people if it wasn't for legislation. Because King them dealt with the violence of their era. America was built on violence. So when you talk about this legislation, you talk about historical violence. I don't get white folks get me caught up in systematic racism. No, it's violence. America was built on violence, and violence is the #1 economic stream on this planet.
Now let's talk about that, and because I saw how the media was spinning, and giving these new terms about, finally calling folks who raise things, enemies against the state and all that stuff, because it's convenient for them to love on black people right now in the media. But the way you really love on black folks is you give them something. You repair them for what has happened. Now you talk about, you talk about the what happened in Washington, D.C. and the violence and all that. We need to make sure that we are being honest with ourselves about the violence that's going on right here in Chicago.
Well, Kurt, let me respond. First of all, the word violence means to violate. Dr. Amos Wilson, the great psychiatrist, said it this way. He said, the only way they can destroy the black community is we stop loving each other. So it's very key right now that we call this Leviathan for what it is. People need to recognize that you want to take this and put it under a system. Let me make it real simple and say it real quick. When you pass this legislation, it's going to educate. People need to be educated why violence is a disease, but why it ain't a contagion. When you talk about education, you talk about institutional violence that has to be torn apart. America was built on violence. It's an unnecessary force, an unnecessary evil right now. Collaboration. It is very important that collaboration is important. Civility. Don't kill me because you bumped my car because ain't neither one of us got no insurance. Civility. Redirect the funding. People have been written in the budget in this state like a man named Dr. Gary Slocum. Look him up. He's an epidemiologist and other. Written in the budget, receiving violence prevention money, and they can't throw rice in the wedding. You cannot stop violence by marching people down an expressway. You have to scientifically and legislatively come at that. The formula is in place. Now we're pushing for the legislation.
Okay, so over the years, who bears the responsibility for the teaching and the exploitation of violence? In my opinion, I say that when you talk about this government, you talk about the government at large. I mean, where they would tell you that, hey, you don't need to be fighting in your communities, but the first thing that they do when they have an issue, they go kill somebody. Like we went and killed Muammar Gaddafi. So when younger folks see this, then they're like, man, who are you to tell us that we shouldn't be, functioning violently when we have an issue? Because that's exactly what you do as a government.
The paradigm shift has changed. And theologically, the hand of God is at work also, too. Mm-hmm. So I know as a Christian, when I look at, be not conformed, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Dr. King said these words, the role of the church is not to be the servant nor the master to the state, but its consciousness. And so we developed a brand new ministry, Martin Luther King Ministries, Martin Luther King Community Church, appropriate name for this season. And the thrust is to pass this legislation. I want the audience to understand there is a remedy, there's a solution right now. If you pass this bill, HR 0433, violence is a health crisis, violence is a disease, you're going to see a game changer.
Yeah.
And with legislation, Curtis, you know, comes a
He's
pot
calling
of
me Curtis
resources.
because my middle name is Curtis. Alan Curtis Green, AC
Well,
Green.
also, he's the son of a pastor.
He's been knowing me for how many years? 20 years?
Yeah.
10 or more?
Father was a great military chaplain, too.
Yeah.
Father was a chaplain in the military.
He knew my dad.
Yeah, what a man. And that's why you got the sense you got. You come from good stock, son.
Well, thank you.
I like
that.
the idea of that bill. I like the idea of that bill because
exists.
if you make it a health crisis, then you have to deal with it from the health perspective.
You do.
Because that goes back to children. You know, I got my son here. He's 7 years old. Never had meat before. Very, very tranquil and peaceful son. But through research, I've discovered that even the consumption of certain foods will create an aggression in you, and also a lack of nutrition will also create a deficiency in your brain that will lead to mental
That's
disorder.
right. And the thing about it is, what we have done in this country, if we be honest with ourselves, we have given up our African roots in terms of how we eat and how we ate. And we've taken on this Anglo understanding.
Right.
And this Anglo understanding is, you know, like you said, you're ingesting the wrong thing. It makes you wild and crazy and want to fight. And we've taken on many and most of their ways. We've become like them. Exactly. We didn't only inherit their names. We have inherited their spirits because of what we have taken on, wanting to be like somebody because, you know, they have more. You kind of like want to see yourself doing kind of what we can not want to hear this, but it's so true. Right. Because look at this, like you said, Reverend Anthony Williams, in this country, you cannot say that what happened in the Capitol was an anomaly. Mm-hmm. Because every time this country has moved to another level or to a different dynamic or paradigm, it happened through fighting. The Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, the freeing of black folks, it happened through fighting. Right. What about the Boston Tea Party?
The shedding of black blood.
Come on now.
Crispus Attucks, the civil rights movement, George Floyd. Now we can get America to get its knee off our neck. Give us reparations, and you keep the stimulus check. You keep that $2,000, give me my reparations. So we're there now. So intelligent public policy is what we've got to be leveraging the Biden administration for. And then be careful about our black elected officials, because the Democratic Party will use them to suppress us. So I ain't taking no orders from no black caucus. Look at it. I'm not going to do kumbaya with America till you give me my reparations.
That's right.
And deal with this issue of violence. America was built on violence. Understand that? It is, look, violence is the #1 problem of the 21st century, and I will debate it with anyone.
I totally agree with you.
Until you pass the legislation to check it, we're going to continue to get what we get.
Let me thank Keisha. You called in. Keisha said that the government should give money to mental health in the black community. That's a big deal for Keisha. And Pastor April Dudley is on the live line. Hey, Pastor Dudley, how are you?